getting in it. Although it's cleaned and it's filtered, then you know there were regulations and health protections. These spars are made out of hazel. You can get some willow spars, but it is mainly hazel, and they're quite locally made. I think the wood for these spars came from Stockbridge way over in Hampshire, and I've got a couple of people who make them for me, and you can either get them split into lengths and pointed but not twisted, so they usually have to be twisted like that, and that works as like a sprung staple to hold the thatch on. Goes into the thatch and stays in there holding the thatch on. If you're really lazy, you can get your spar maker to actually twist them for you and put them into little pre-packs for you, which means that he's ensured that you're going to use every spar rather than twisting one and it snapping because it's gone dry. They can come in all different sizes, lengths. They can be knobblier than this. This is some really nice spars which I've selected really to go along as the finished job, strapping the straw down, and the twist will go in like that every so often, like stapling it on, and then joining the next one to it and moving along. After stripping some of the top layer of thatch on this wall, which is nearly 20 years old, we've then done a lot of preparation to it and built it up, and then we put along the top, we've got long dollies of straw tied up every foot or so, every 6 inches, and we fix that all the way along the top to level it along. We then put what we call a course of straw along, which is this here, from there to there. Then on top of that we wrap basically what we call a turnover bunch of mixed up straw and bent at the top and wrapped over both sides, so they marry into the straw you've already got on here. The straw we've got there is fixed by means of the hazel spars, which you can see there, and you can use a hazel strap going along, or you can use a straw bond, what we call a straw bond. That's what fixes the lower bit on. That all gets covered up by the top turnover, but then of course you have to tame that turnover down, so that's what I was just doing just there, is strapping it down. And we usually strap down the ridge over there. We got 3 rows. We usually use 3 rows, one at the top, somewhere about there. You can see how hard that is. It's pretty solid there. So every spar will go in like that, and the spars will go in horizontally or slightly uphill if we can, so the water doesn't run down the spar and into the thatch. The next layer, the next strap will be somewhere like there. Not quite so much resistance to the sparring there, because the very top will have all the dollies and the preparation, so it becomes very, very solid there, yeah. You still really have to use a mallet because your hand would just ruin the palm of your hand if you carry on. We do occasionally get the new build. If you get an estate of houses in a village now, the council would maybe say that one or two, or certainly one of them, should be thatched if there's quite a lot of thatch in that village, and they'll make a point of that. The house is of course built with the building regs of the ceiling heights, so it's rather a tallish house now, whereas a lot of cottages are a lot lower. We can go back. There's some cottages we've worked on are 1500. Wow. So we've got there quite a few hundred years going on, and they vary with the thickness of thatch that's on there. There could be 10 layers of old thatch. There could be just 2. It all depends on what the thatcher did each time when he came to thatch it.
Oh,
you might get a cottage where the last 3 thatches, the guys just came along and thatched over the top each time. So therefore it's getting a bit too fat. At some point that's got to be trimmed back. Otherwise it just gets too heavy or too wide an eave at the bottom. I mean, the thickest we've come across is probably 6 foot at the top, near the top of the cottage, near the ridge. Wow. And that was a chimney that had to be stripped around because the chimney was faulty, and so the builder had to rebuild the chimney from the attic up, and he stood in the gap, and he was a 6 foot chap, and his head was level with the top of the thatch. So, yeah, they're wrapped over and wrapped over and wrapped over, and they become so compact that there's tons of straw up there, really, literally. The straw really is tied to each other, and it's almost like sometimes if you took the timbers out of some cottages, the straw, the thatch, would almost stay in a mould. How it is. We have stripped some thatches off, and the timber work's not looked too bad while we've been stripping it, until we get to the last layer. And we take off the ties or the old tar cord that the last layer, the very original thatch was tied onto the original timbers, and immediately we do that, some of the timbers just fall in. It's all holding each other, you know. So you've got to assess it first before you open up the can of worms, so to speak. That's generally the strapping of it, and it'll go all the way along like that, and then some thatchers would maybe put a cross in like that, and that's really almost a trademark of a thatcher. You can have, we always put the single cross, such as similar to that, and then another single cross there. Some thatchers will put a cross in and then double cross it like that, etc. Right. So you get like a basket tree, sort of a basket work of spars there. But of course every spar you put into the ridge is a potential water trap. In a way, the fewer the better. I mean, one old chap I used to work with used to say, put all your spars underneath, he said, boy. He said, then you'll need few on top. He said, keep the water out. Wow. Didn't look very intricate, but of course it was very effective. I did quite a lot of work with an old thatcher in the Woodford Valley, and it was invaluable what he used to just say. Just odd comments, and you just take them on and have to think about them. I mean, you obviously go with your very first thatcher and you learn the basics, and then from there on you're basically always learning. Even now we're finding different ways of doing jobs. Even this morning we're trying to devise a different way of wrapping that straw over the top, a little bit more comfortably, a little bit more efficiently. So you never stop. You never stop learning and trying out different things. Yes, I mean, we used to help a chap called Phil Dimmer in Bishopston. He's still alive, actually. And we used to go and help Phil, and he would stick his straw upside down sometimes in various places. And so we'd ask him why he'd done it, and he'd explain it, and it was absolutely logical. Although actually it's not in the textbook, it's not in your original textbook, textbook in inverted commas, that you when you're first training with a thatcher, because you always think that the ears are always hidden and the butts of the straw always come out to the surface. But no, he when it suited him, he'd stick a wad of straw upside down, and I've done that since quite a few times in the correct places. And my sons, I've got 2 sons who thatch. Tom's been thatching 20 something years and Will's nearly 20 years. And when I first told them this, they'd sort of look at me as though to say, well, what's he on about? So he gone a bit funny, he's putting the straw upside down in there. But now they do it themselves, so they've obviously picked it up themselves. I think they've got to keep their mind open. And when thatchers are fairly young and they go out and do a few jobs, and people have told them that looks lovely, you've got to keep their feet on the ground and think, well, no, I can improve on that. I can still learn from those older thatchers. They've got a wealth of knowledge which I can get something from before they give up and it's gone. If you could go with an older thatcher, and of course now you don't like to think of it, but I am one of those older thatchers now, obviously, but and just pick up bits and pieces of knowledge. I just ask, why do you do that? What's best there, or whatever. You're never too old to learn. No. And times change as well with the world, as you know, with money and the type of people that come and live in the country and buy the cottages now aren't quite the same as they were years ago. They weren't the old villager who had lived there for 90 years, were born there and died there and saved up for the thatching in a teapot on the side or something. It is now quite a lot of them are professional businessmen and ladies, but sometimes they're looking for instead of the local regular guy who's always looked after that thatch and knows it, they might be just looking at the bottom line of the estimate, because there's other things they want to do to it, like extend it and buy a new car and have the driveway done and all the rest of it. We've been working on and off all the way over it for 40.
Wow.
40 years. It was over 40 years ago I first came here.
Wow.
To do a little bit around the back. But I think it would give the customer just confidence that I would know the roof and I'm going to look after it for them. And I would like to look after it as it's always been looked after and give it as, I'm not going to do a quick old job and go. You could make this look like this without any preparation at all. We could just come here without any preparation, so you've cut out all that time and just put the straw on the roof, and it looks okay, it looks good. To the layman, to the customer possibly, it would look good and they'd be happy with that. But after about 4 or 5 years, it starts to sink in various places because there's no bulk to it. There's a hollow or something that should have been filled in. And then they're on the phone trying to get the thatcher back, and he's nowhere to be seen because he can't come back because he didn't charge enough really to call back and have another look at it. And we will always call back if there's any problem or query or anything. We'll just come back and sort anything out, or there's a bird under the wire or something, or a plant that's grown up through it or something like that. We just come back and deal with it. What happens is, of course, people grow roses and ivy and everything around up thatch walls, they keep these back, these roses, but I mean some people just let them go, and they're quite random. They go up through the wire and just rip the wire back, and so therefore the bird will get in, or mouse or whatever, and then get stuck. Unfortunately, get stuck. But yeah, so the best thing is to keep anything away from the thatch itself. I was just saying this morning I need a little bit of repair to it somewhere, because it's going to split right open. This was made about 30 years ago by my father-in-law, who was a carpenter and joiner, and made out of beechwood. And I think that's an ash handle. What I've got on one side, I've drilled a load of holes in it to give it some grip, so that I can use it as a little, what we call a legget, which is the tool that we use to, shall we say, dress the straw up into place.
Right. Oh, so you don't cut it off the bottom, you dress it up into it?
We dress it up into place. We'll trim it with a pair of hand shears. I'll just get those.
Okay, so what have you got there? Sheep shears?
Yeah, we've got the old sheep shears that you see hung up on a pub fireplace, etc. We'll trim this down. And I've usually got my mallet with me, so that's why I put the holes in, so I can use it as a legget as well to dress that up. We'll then trim along the bottom, somewhere around about there, which will give it an edge, give it a sharp edge. But we'll trim that with ordinary shears, ordinary head shears. In fact, a lot of thatchers are using topiary shears at the moment from Japan. Terrifically sharp steel.
Wow.
So we'll trim it all down, we'll tidy up the top, we'll trim off the little bits that stick out, and then the wire will go over the top. Of course, the wire will then wrap down over the whole lot and tuck in underneath, get fixed up underneath.
So I know we mentioned this earlier, but what's the big difference between, or is there a big difference? What's the difference between doing this? So tell us, you're doing a wall here. What's the difference between that and doing the roof of a house?
Well, the roof of the house, I mean, this is the same as any ridge on a house. The eaves that cut along the bottom are all almost the same as any eaves that you'd find on a main house. It's just really the bulk in the middle that you haven't got on the wall. You've got a small area rather than a big area on a cottage. So it's all finish, it's all detail really on a wall.
Are you going to put a...
All from there just flows straight into the straw that's there. So there's no cut block pattern as on some cottages.
Is that just because walls don't need to be as fancy? Or
yes, basically. Yeah, it would look just too heavy on a wall, too detailed, too fancy. Yeah. The other thing is also that most, I should think 70% of cottages in Wiltshire have got the plain finish. It's just that just this area here, we've got 2 or 3 cottages that have got a block finish.
So being in keeping with the local surroundings, that's all part of it.
Oh yeah, and also the council will probably, this wall is probably listed with this building.
Right.
And so if you were doing something too fancy on it, the council could tell you they don't like it.
Wow.
You have to change it.
Wow, I've no idea.
But with all these 3 cottages here in this area, they would all be listed, but they've already got the existing pattern ridge on it. So it would be like for those.
Right, so you can't vary that then once it's there? Or
they wouldn't mind you putting a plain ridge onto the cottage, but they wouldn't want you changing from a plain ridge to a pattern ridge.
Right, okay.
So they go one way but not the other. They go traditional but not back to untraditional. The mallet well, obviously I use it as the mallet to tap in everything that I'm strapping down here. I've also got 3 nails that poke out that side.
Yeah, I saw that. Oh, there we go.
Which I use as a wire tightener. So when the wire's on and I just want to tighten the wire back to the thatch, I can just twist it like that within the netting and it pulls the netting up tight.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a clever
yeah.
idea.
Yeah, I'm patenting this because there's not a lot of market to that sort of thing anyway. But so it's a multi-tool really. It's one of the multi-tools you can get. I have got a new mallet which is sat in my van, waiting to be used, waiting for this one to give up. But he's been sat in my van now for 4 or 5 years at least. I was always helping with my father on the farm all through every summer from the age of about 11, and for sort of 6 weeks he'd be on the harvest earning I don't know, about £50 for the whole time, you know, which was great. And I thought, well, I'm gonna carry on doing this. And so on my last sort of holidays from school, from secondary school, I managed to stay on the farm till October, until my mother said, no, you're not going to carry on doing stuff that your father's done. You should be working in insurance or bank. So she happened to have a friend who worked in an office in Salisbury who got me an interview. I thought I'd try and fail the interview, but I was obviously the only person going for it. And I got the job in some office in Salisbury, which I didn't like at all. I stuck it out for about 3 years, and I saw the local Thatcher in the pub and asked him if how it was going. He said he was so busy he could take on 15 blokes. I think he'd had a couple of pints. And so I waited for a week and I phoned him up. I said, you know, remember what you said? I said, would you take me on? And he sort of stumbled a bit and said, yeah. I'm not sure that he could have taken on 15 blokes, but he did take me on. Well, there was 2 or 3 reasons. I wanted to work outside from very young. And so the farm work in those days, it's changed now, of course. You sit in the tractor all day with a computer. But farm work in those days was on an open tractor without a cab, and a lot of it was footwork. You know, you did a lot of manual work in those days on the farm, so I thought that would be good. But thatching then seemed to be the next step, nearest thing I could do. So I sort of targeted the local Thatcher really. I thought I'd ask him how it was going. And from there, obviously, as I said, he took me on.
And were you a natural to it, or did it take some work to get you going?
I think I probably was. I think you have to. It's quite a shock for anyone who isn't used to the weather that we get, and of course it's lovely on a nice May day or September afternoon with the sun shining, but when it's sort of mid-July and 35 degrees, or midwinter and -6, and your hands are stuck, neatly stuck to anything metal, or you're up on top of the roof and the wind's from the east, you know, yeah, it can put quite a lot of people off. But I was already quite hardened to that anyway, I think, through the farm work. Oh, best day would be about 70, 75 degrees, you know, a little bit of breeze.
And is there any particular sort of property or sort of roof or what that you enjoy doing more than others?
Yeah, one right out the way, down a little lane somewhere.
Is that because people stop and talk to you and interrupt the work, or
yeah,
just?
It's great when people do talk to you, but sometimes on a public footpath, it can you tend to sort of almost tend to think, I can't talk to everyone. You know, you have to sort of put your head down and look busy a few of the times, you know.
Yeah.
But certainly during the last lockdown that we had, we were working down a little lane, and I thought this would be just an ideal spot. And it ended up being a very popular footpath down to a river. People, it was like a football crowd coming by, you know. I suppose the furthest we would go would be about 25 miles, and that would be, we wouldn't want to go any further than that. No, it's not really territorial, not nowadays, not with the travel and everything. It used to be more like that. But no, it's just basically you don't want to be sat in your vehicle for 2 hours a day, really. I mean, I suppose it averages out 5 to 10 miles away. Thatchers don't always do everything within their own village or village areas, you know, the surrounding villages. They don't always do every job. And you're right, yes, it used to be more territorial. When I was training, there used to be a gang in the next town or near the next town who the chap I was working for used to moan and groan about because they used to get a job in the village that we were working in, you know. We have had one occasion where we were down almost out of our area years ago, down in Dorset, and the local thatcher, or a more local thatcher, he came along the road, and we are convinced that he was sort of driving near us, far too near us. Whether he was or not, I don't know. But yeah, there's probably a bit of rivalry there.
And you say both your sons do it, and
Yes.
I've seen one or two. I know one or two other thatchers about. How many thatchers are there in this area around Salisbury now compared to when you started?
I don't think it's changed an awful lot. I think there's about 50 in Wiltshire, all in all, which sound quite a lot. But there's a lot of thatch.
Sorry, start that again.
Yeah, there's a lot of thatch in the Pewsey Vale area, etc., and certain areas in Wiltshire.
So round here particularly, there's a lot of work for thatching.
Yes, there is. It stayed fairly consistent. It goes up and down with the economy and everything else. And with the thatchers who are in there, I mean, you might get some thatchers who take on 4 or 5 lads, and of course 2 or 3 of those lads, once they've done 2 or 3 years, might think, well, I fancy doing that myself, and off they go. And out of those 2 or 3, maybe 1 might drop out and go back to what he was doing before, and the other 2 just carry on. They might then take on a lad or 2, which then creates the same thing again.
So are there as many young people interested in thatching, taking it up? I know there are more people in general, but yes, do you think there's more or less
I
interested?
haven't had as many recently in the last 10 years contacting me and asking can they come on and be a thatcher as I used to. Yeah, so I don't know whether there's more things to attract, there's more jobs, there's more things that they do. The other thing is making things such as making the spars, which is another quite a manual, hard job. There doesn't seem to be that many younger people taking that up.
Can you use any old straw? Where does that come from?
Well, we grow this ourselves. So we grow, we get people to grow it on National Trust ground near Amesbury, round Stonehenge, at Countess Farm, right on the Amesbury roundabout there. They sow it, and really from there we look after it, and then we harvest it the old-fashioned way with an old binder that's pulled behind an little old tractor. There's not an engine in it in sight. It's just run on one land wheel, and it then throws out the weak sheaves, as you know. We then stuck them, as they would have done years ago, stuck them up into 6s or 8s or 12s, let them dry, and they used to say you've got to hear the church bells ring 3 times before you can cart them in, and then we cart them in to a rick, and then we then get the thrashing machine in, and there's only one guy around here, and he lives at Martin, who's got a thrashing machine. I expect there's not another thrashing contractor for 100 miles, I would imagine.
Wow, so that's another thing that's
yeah.
sort of gone out of fashion, as it was,
Yes.
I suppose.
Yes, and here come in and thrash the straw. We end up with the thatching bundles. The farmer ends up with the grain, and then there's an amount of rubbish straw which gets baled up for horses.
Wow, and why do you do it with your old-fashioned tractor and things? Presumably there must be sort of modern equivalents to some of these devices now that might make harvesting a bit easier.
No, there's not. The modern equivalent to the binder is, of course, the combine harvester, which just goes into a crop which is about this tall. They don't want the straw nowadays; they just want the grain, and it'll just go in and cut that. The straw is then either chopped and just spread on the ground, or it is baled up into the big round bales that you see, or big square bales you see in the fields.
And that makes it unsuitable for thatching?
Well, yeah, it's just in bits. It's just bale straw,
right.
Literally.
So it shreds it rather than cuts it?
Yes, you could spread it around your strawberries, It doesn't go around there, but it's no good. We need straw 3 foot, 3'6", 4 foot tall to start with.
Wow.
In the field. So you're virtually, and we've had it almost, I'm not very tall, but it's almost that over the shoulder. And the only way to cut that for thatching purposes is with the binder, because it just cuts the straw. The knife goes in, it flops back onto a canvas bed with slats in it. It runs along, takes it along to 2 elevator canvases, which pinch it, take it up over into a knotter, which then, after a certain weight, trips the knot, it knots it, and then throws the sheaf onto the floor. And the sheaf is as it is. It's not cut in half, it's not crushed or anything.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, they don't knock thatch places down now that they used to. They used to just take barns down everywhere that you didn't need them. And also there's the added new build plus new extensions that people have done on their thatched properties. So it's not going down in area, I wouldn't say. We're not losing thatch. They're not making thatch walls anymore. There's very few of those, because actually, who really wants to cost? You don't live in the wall, that's the trouble. So those are just staying around about the same. But I would say probably the area of thatch, if anything, is getting a little bit larger, slightly. Yeah. There was a time, probably back after the war, where they were short of thatchers, and if the thatch needed doing, they'd probably cover it with tin or something, or tear it off and put some other roof covering on. There weren't the restrictions or listed buildings regulations or anything in those days, of course, so they were able to do anything. As you look back in any street view of a village, there's always a thatched cottage or two that isn't there anymore. They just started to fall down a little bit, so they pulled it down and built a new bungalow or something.
Is it easy to give a rough estimate of a normal sized cottage? I have no idea.
No, not really, because there's so many different factors of access and size, what the roof's got on it. There's all sorts of factors. It is not just a standard figure, really. But it's quite a cost, obviously.
Yeah.
It's a cost that most people nowadays do realise. No, I think the internet and everything, all the information that they can get on these places, and also estate agents and that will point it out nowadays, etc. That, of course, you realise that you'll need some thatching done in a few years' time, or in 2 years' time, or whatever. So you'll have to sort of get a thatcher in to give you some idea of price before you put an offer in. Not really that many other things, no. Mainly it is fire.
Right.
But there's less, apparently there's less thatch fires per thatched cottage than there is any other roof covering house.
Really? What,
Yes.
because people are more careful?
Yes. But you hear about it more because it's the first thing that the local paper will put on their front page with all the fire engines all outside. It's dramatic news.
Very dramatic picture.
Rather than a little terraced house somewhere that caught fire down in a city somewhere.
That must feel horrible if you've ever seen any of your places you've done go up?
Yes.
Oh.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that?
Yeah, not good. Yeah, there was one we went and watched it, and the owner was watching it as well, and it is quite a sad occasion. Really is dramatic. You know, you can have up to 10 fire engines, 70 firemen there, the village out watching it.
Blimey.
The owner is distraught. You're not happy because that's one you did 3 years ago, and it was for the owner, and you were all happy with it, and now it's just going up in smoke.
Oh God.
It's not very often. Well, I think you need to be I think you need to know what you're going into. Weather-wise, there's no indoor work at all. It's all outdoor, no matter what the weather throws at you. You've got to work most days that you can. You can't have every wet afternoon off. Otherwise, recently, before Christmas, you wouldn't have done anything at all. I think you need to be conscientious. You need almost to do it as if it was your place, and that's how you would like it done. There's also a pride in your job in that people will stop and say that looks lovely, but also the fact that you need to be happy with it as well.
Yeah. So it's not sort of a businessman's trade, you know. You can't just jump in, get it on there quick, and jump out as quickly as possible. You have to care about it.
There's not many rich thatchers. It's if you want to make some money, there's other trades that you will make money quicker from.
But in terms of satisfaction,
oh yeah, no, it's pretty rich, and it's a rich trade for satisfaction. Yeah, very. It's so visual, you see. It's big. It's big art. It's big. It's there. People see it. You can't. If you were a plumber or electrician, I feel sorry for people sometimes who do that, because they might do a wonderful job in a cottage somewhere, but it's only ever seen by the person there that lives there.
well, and if it's under the floor or behind the walls, not even by them.
Yeah, every joint might be absolutely spot on. They've made it careful. Everything's just so, but no one else can see it. So I do feel sorry for those sort of people there who are very conscientious in their jobs. On the other hand, they could do a rough job and no one would see it as well. The other thing is with the thatching is, of course, it is all quite visual, quite open. People can come and have a good inspection. They may not know what they're looking at, but
like you know
there.
a good one from a bad one, I guess.
Yeah, people do. Some people have more idea than others, obviously, of what is good and what isn't. Well, we just finished the job at Broad Chalk, the last job, and we're going back down just to replace a tile that the scaffolders, obviously the scaffold was on a tiled roof, so we're just going back there. And at the same time, we will go up and we will just what we call tweak around the bottom there, because we couldn't see the finished job because the scaffolding was up.
Right.
We needn't do that. We needn't go to that bother, because you know the customer is very happy with the job, but we know it just needs that little bit of tweaking, and so we're going to go back and make sure that that's done, and that's how we'd like to leave the job. Yeah, you feel good? Yeah, feel happy. No, so that's how we want to leave it. We will look and if there's just something that's not quite to your liking, although no one else may not see it, you can see it, because your eyes go to different things, I think, once you do the job all your life. No, I'm quite glad I chose this way. Yeah, no regrets. No regrets at all. And I'm quite happy. I'm quite really proud and happy that my sons took it on. I didn't think they would, and I didn't push them to it. But they're both excellent craftsmen as well. I can just leave them on the job, but they're doing their own jobs anyway. So I'm really quite proud of that.
So your wife didn't push them away from that like your mother did you from farming?
No, she didn't. No.
Because she could see you were happier in it than perhaps your father was farming?
I think so, yeah. I think there's something, if you can go home at night and know you've done a really good job, that's the main thing. That's what we're talking about that's the bundle of straw that would come out the thrasher.
Beautiful.
That we would then use on the roof. That's what you see. That's what you see just there. Is that laid on like that, and that is how a normal roof is laid as well. That's what you'll see the ends, and that's the ends that you would see on a thatched roof. There.
Yes.
So the water will just run from end of straw to end of straw until it doesn't go in. It does depend on the angle of the straw. Steeper. If the straw's too flat an angle, the water doesn't run off the end so quick. It'll run down in. So you need the straw to be lying at a steepish angle. It'll just run off the ends of the straw down off to the edge of the thatch and onto the ground. You can thatch with rye. It's not as good as wheat straw. There is a hybrid called Chase, which is a rye wheat mix, which a lot of thatchers use. You can thatch with water reed, the water reeds or Norfolk reed, and we have come across a heather roof.
Really?
Yeah, I do have heather in the store, some heather. And the other thing we have thatched with years ago, when there was a shortage of wheat straw for 2 years, there was 2 failures of harvests, and we thatched with South African veltgrass.
Wow.
Which is sort of a mixture between the water reed and wheat straw. Yeah, a little bit taller, grassy tops instead of the wheat ear. Very much looked the colour of wheat straw, but had like a solid pith to it, a solid stem, and quite hard.
So that made it a bit more difficult to work with?
No, it wasn't too bad. It wasn't too bad. We were allowed by the council that year to use the veldt grass, because of the the situation of the wheat straw.
And didn't look different?
No,
Wow.
there's still 1 or 2 buildings that I know of are still South African veldt grass.
Wow,
But you wouldn't know.
fascinating.
No money at all in it, because all we're doing it for is
Marvellous.